Hello everyone. This is the Student Teaching Info Session for any student who is eligible and plans to student teach during the 2021-2022 academic year. Before we dive in, I'm going to take a moment to orient you to this webpage. Right below the video, there is a link to the PDF version of this PowerPoint presentation. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see my name and contact information, as well as two sidebars that I'll reference frequently through this video. The top is entitled Required Forms, and it includes links to the materials that you will need to complete and submit for student teaching, as well as the Advanced Teaching Practicum for middle and secondary students. The sidebar underneath is entitled Student Teaching Resources. There you'll find links to informational handouts and web pages that will assist you in completing your forms and in making choices about your placement preferences. Lastly, I urge you to pause this presentation at any time to jot down notes, take a look at the sidebar links, or simply take a break and come back to it later. I'm going to start off by introducing some names that will become familiar to you next year. The first is Melissa Robinson. That's me. I am the Field Experience Coordinator for the School of Education, which means I arrange field experiences, student teaching, and practicum experiences for our students in surrounding PK-12 schools. I've worked behind the scenes with your faculty up until now, but we will get to interact more during your final year. Elisa Branham is our licensure officer. Elisa knows all there is to know about licensure, and she is a great resource when it comes time to start applying for jobs, especially if you are applying out of state. Keep her contact information handy. Lastly, Dr. Nicole Babalola directs our PDS program. PDS stands for Professional Development Schools. You can learn more about this program by visiting the PDS website. The link is in the bottom right-hand sidebar on this page. You can apply to be a part of the PDS program, and if accepted, you are placed in a high-needs school with your peers. Dr. Babalola will also be the instructor for the elementary and middle secondary student teaching coursework, so most of you will interact with her frequently. The link on the bottom of this slide will take you to our student teaching handbooks. It is also included in the Student Teaching Resources sidebar. Please take the time to read the handbook that applies to you. Listed below are sort of the bare bones requirements to be eligible to student teach. Your overall GPA must be 2.75 or higher. Your GPA in your major, which is your content area, must be 2.5 or higher. So if you are a Spanish education major, these are your Spanish courses. If you are language arts, these are your English courses. You must have completed all of your required education courses with a grade of C or higher. You cannot have an incomplete in any education course. These are your pedagogy courses, the courses that are teaching you how to teach. And lastly, you must complete and submit the required forms by the due date, and I will explain those requirements and due dates later in the presentation. Now, a few slides about student teaching itself. I'm not going to go into great detail here because the details vary program to program. You can review your student teaching handbook or email me if you have a specific question. But across the board, here are the highlights. Student teaching is a course with an instructor and a syllabus. Most of you will have specific assignments to complete during your experience. Student teaching is full-time and not just during school hours. We advise student teachers to get to school before their clinical supervisor, which is our term for cooperating teacher, and to stay until the teacher leaves for the day. Student teachers are expected to participate in professional development, parent-teacher conferences, etc. Elementary, middle secondary, and music students will begin their student teaching when their clinical supervisors report to school in August and January. Art and PE Plus will begin when KU classes commence. UEC students adhere to their teacher's start date in the fall, but not in the spring. Everyone will also follow their placement school's spring break, so please do not plan any vacations that would require you to miss school days in between August and mid-May of next year until you are certain of your placement school's schedule. Those absences would be considered unexcused absences and your grade would suffer. You will take full control of the classroom, but not immediately. Most student teachers observe the first week and then gradually take on responsibility until they have full control. You'll be assigned a university supervisor, which is a KU representative that acts as a resource and main point of contact for both you and your clinical supervisor. This person is usually a graduate student, a faculty member, or a former teacher or administrator. Most of you probably already know your student teaching timeline, but I do get asked this quite often, so just as a review. Elementary education students complete 2 student teaching experiences, one at primary and one at intermediate level. The fall experience is shorter than the spring experience. Middle secondary and foreign language students complete a practicum in the fall and student teaching in the spring. Whenever possible, one experience is at middle level and one is at the high school level. STEM Teach KU students complete one semester-long student teaching experience in either middle or high school in the fall or the spring. Art, music, and PE Plus students complete 2 student teaching experiences, one at elementary and one at either middle or high school level. Both are approximately 8 weeks long. UEC students also complete 2 student teaching experiences, one in a primary elementary classroom and the other in a unified early childhood classroom, with the fall experience being the shorter one. And again, most of the other details about student teaching can be found in your program's Student Teaching Handbook. Now let's move on to the placement process and the required paperwork, which is the real purpose of this presentation. The most common question I receive is, can I ask to be placed in a certain district or school or with a certain teacher? And the short answer is no, you cannot. However, students are allowed to preference area and type of school, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But it's important to remember that school districts make these placements, and they receive requests from all neighboring universities, even some not so neighboring, like Fort Hays, Emporia, Wichita, and even out of state. Students also cannot student teach in a school that they have family attending, have family employed, or they have attended at any time. But the same school district is fine. Students with multiple experiences during the senior year are placed in different districts whenever possible so that they can experience a variety of school settings. In line with not being able to guarantee certain placements, reliable transportation is required. There is simply no way to guarantee a placement within a certain distance of your home or on the bus route. We will do everything we can to facilitate carpooling and to keep your commute reasonable, but it is ultimately your responsibility to be able to get from point A to point B. That being said, if you have a legitimate personal or medical concern that would interfere with your ability to travel, please contact me or your advisor. We have had students in the past who could not drive for medical reasons or had special accommodations through the university. Please reach out if you are in a similar situation. There are several forms that you will need to complete for student teaching, some hard copy and some online. They are the online student teaching request form, the health assessment and TB test, professional liability coverage, background check clearance, and bloodborne pathogen training. For those of you who are student teaching or middle secondary students completing their advanced teaching practicum in fall 2021, your due dates are as follows. The online student teaching request form must be submitted by the end of the day on February 26th. The rest of your requirements and forms are due by the end of the day on April 16th. For the remainder of you who are either visual art, music, STEM Teach KU, or PE Plus students who are not student teaching until spring 2022, all of your required forms are due by the end of the day on August 27th. You should scan these forms and email them to me, Melissa Robinson. My email address is on the PowerPoint slide on the due date. Okay, let's go through each requirement one by one. The online student teaching request form is the form I work from when processing your request. That is why it is due earlier than the other forms. It is also why it is important for your submission to be accurate and clear. In the next few slides, we are going to go through it step by step. The link to the form is available in the Required Forms sidebar. FYI, before you begin this form, you cannot start it and come back to it later, and it will time you out if left inactive for 30 minutes, so make sure you have about 20 to 45 minutes of free time before you start. Like I mentioned, this form really doesn't take that long to complete, and I'm going to go through the sections with you here so you can be thinking about them before you dive in. The first section just involves providing your general contact and program information. Next, you are asked about endorsements. This section only applies to you if you are working toward a TESOL or Provisional Special Education endorsement, have completed or plan to complete the preliminary coursework prior to student teaching, and would like to complete your endorsement practicum in conjunction with your student teaching. Now, if you're thinking, I don't understand a word she just said, you can just select Not Applicable from the drop-down here and move on. If you know this applies to you, and you will, please select either ESL or SPED from this drop-down menu. A caveat here, if you have already completed the coursework and practicum for your TESOL endorsement, or you plan to receive your TESOL endorsement by exam only, then this is also a situation where you would select Not Applicable from the drop-down menu. And for more general information about endorsements, because I feel like this is another area that students often have questions, you can review the TESOL and Special Education endorsement handout that I have included under Student Teaching Resources on the side of this page. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's only going to apply to a handful of you, but please review the handout and reach out to me or your advisor if you have questions. Next, you will indicate your placement preferences. Now, as I've already said, you are not allowed to preference specific districts, schools, or teachers, but you can preference whether you would like to be placed in a Lawrence or Kansas City area school, and whether you would like to be placed in a suburban, rural, or urban school district. Go ahead and open the Placement Districts handout under Student Teaching Resources and take a look at it. This is a pretty complete list of the districts in which I place our student teachers and their area and type designations. This chart may help you in making your selections on this portion of the form. Students can also request a private, usually Catholic school placement. Any of you interested in that should contact me via email for further discussion. Lastly, I also ask that you let me know the city that you'll be living in next year so I can try to keep your commute reasonable. If your number one preference is Lawrence area, suburban district, and I see that you live in Topeka, I will try to place you in maybe Shawnee Heights or Auburn Washburn before I try to place you in Lawrence to try to keep you closer to home. Hopefully that makes sense. As I also mentioned earlier, students cannot be placed in a school they've attended, have family attending, or have family employed. The next section is where you will self-report what PK-12 schools you've attended, have family attending, or working. Please be honest here because we will most likely find out if you aren't, and that's just unpleasant for everyone. There's also a notes section for you to let me know whatever information you feel I need to know, but maybe you weren't able to communicate through these form selections. So, I have a health condition, or I don't really care where I'm placed, or I'm bilingual and would love the opportunity to utilize that during my experience, are all examples of the types of things that I might see here. Lastly, write 2 to 3 paragraphs, we call it a statement of introduction, that gives the placement district and teacher a glimpse into who you are and why you're passionate about being a teacher. This section will be read by others, so please be thoughtful of content and grammar. Every semester I have a handful of requests that are outright confused because this statement is so poorly written. On that note, I also want to take a moment to mention your social media presence. Now is the time to make sure that your profiles are set to private or to deactivate them entirely. Each year I have more requests denied because the district rep or the principal or the clinical supervisor, etc., Google the potential student teacher and find unsavory things posted on their social media or tagged on a friend's social media. Your online presence is very much a representation of yourself and a first impression to administrators, colleagues, students, and students' parents. So it's important to begin thinking about that now, since your requests will be sent out to school districts in mid-March. Okay, back to the form. If you do not want to apply to the PDS program, you can continue to the review page, review your selections, and make changes if you would like, and then submit your form. You're done. If you would like to apply to the Professional Development Schools or PDS program, you have one more section to complete. The PDS application consists of only two things. We ask you to designate the semester or semesters in which you'd like to be placed in a PDS site, and to write 1 to 2 paragraphs about why you want to be a part of the PDS program. As I mentioned earlier, I urge you to visit the PDS website linked in the resources sidebar to learn more about the program, and/or reach out to Dr. Babalola to ask questions or set up a time to talk about the program and explore whether it would be a good fit for you. Okay, you have completed all the sections that apply to you. You can click Go to Review page, verify your entries and selections, make changes if you'd like, and then submit your form. 24 to 48 hours after submitting the online form, you will receive an email confirmation from me that will include a summary of your selections and entries just to keep for your records. You will find the Health Assessment TB form by clicking the first link in the Required Forms sidebar. There are 2 parts to this form that you must have completed, signed, and dated by a physician, physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. The middle portion is where the medical professional will indicate that you are negative for TB. The bottom is where they will indicate that you've had a health assessment and you are in good enough health to student teach. This completed form should be submitted to me. If you already have a health TB form completed for another reason, you can submit a copy as long as it is not dated older than 1 year from the date you will begin your experience. That is generally the second week of August in the fall and the first week of January in the spring. You can have the health assessment and TB test administered at Watkins, your regular doctor's office, or any walk-in clinic. Just please keep in mind that the TB test does take 48 hours to read, so do not wait until the last minute. Also make sure when you schedule your appointments that you make it clear you need both a TB test and a health assessment. Professional liability coverage is a little different than the liability coverage that we are most familiar with. This coverage protects you financially in the event of a lawsuit, and the districts require that student teachers have this coverage. It can be obtained through a variety of insurance providers, but most of our students choose to join KNEA's student program since $1 million of coverage is a benefit of your membership. It's easy to sign up, and it will cover you for the entire academic year. If you choose to go with KNEA for your coverage, you can sign up online after April 1st. If you sign up prior to April 1st, you will be signing up for the 2020-2021 academic year, which you do not want to do, and KNEA will not transfer your enrollment. If you join KNEA for your liability coverage, there is no need to submit anything to me because I will verify your membership with them in May. The URL for the online membership form can be found on this PowerPoint slide and in the required forms sidebar. If you'd rather obtain this coverage through a standard insurance provider, that is fine, but in that case, you will need to provide me with proof of coverage with the rest of your paperwork. And if you have any questions about what that might look like, feel free to email me. Next, in the required forms sidebar, you will see a link entitled Background Check Instructions. This form will take you through the process of submitting your information online for a background check. We contract with a company called Validity Screening Solutions for our students' background checks because the districts in which we place students also use this company for their own staff and teachers. After completing the online form and paying a $36 fee, you will receive an emailed receipt. Please submit that to me so that I can see that you've done your part while we wait for the results. When your background check is ready, both you and I will receive an email notifying us. You can log in to the Validity website and view your report, and I will be able to do the same. A copy of your report will be sent to the district when your placement is confirmed, so if you are worried about anything showing up, please reach out to me ahead of time so we can have a private conversation about next steps, if there even need to be any. Most school districts, like KSDE, the Kansas State Department of Education, are concerned mostly about crimes related to drugs, theft, or children. School districts also require that student teachers complete Bloodborne pathogen training. This training teaches you how to handle a situation where you might encounter blood or other bodily fluids. Follow the link in the required forms sidebar to register for and complete the free training online. When you have finished and passed the comprehension quiz at the end, a certificate will become available to you that you will be able to either print or save to your computer. You will turn that in to me. I will send fall student teaching requests to districts in mid-March and spring student teaching requests in mid-September. PDS placements are made by the program co-directors, so their timeline varies a bit from mine. I will receive confirmations for some placements really quickly, within days, and I'll email you those details as soon as I receive them. Others will take until the end of the semester, and we are really at the mercy of the district's timeline here. As a rule of thumb, larger districts will always take longer to get back to me than smaller districts. When you receive the email from me with your placement information, please reach out to your clinical supervisor. Remember, that's our term for cooperating teacher, immediately to introduce yourself and thank him or her. It's important to be excited and make a good first impression. You are about to enter what will most likely be the most formative experience of your college career, so do what you can to ensure it begins in a positive way. I know that was a ton of information, both spoken and written, and you're probably either asleep or maybe curled up in a ball, and that's okay. It's normal to be feeling a lot of conflicting feelings about next year, but you are going to do awesome. Getting these forms completed is the first step, and I and a whole team of people, from faculty to your advisor to our entire staff, are here and ready to support you. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions or concerns. Again, my contact information is on the PowerPoint and right below this video. Lastly, make sure you check the box below that indicates that you have watched this PowerPoint and understand the information that was relayed to you. Thank you for your time. I'm excited for the opportunity to get to know you all and help you navigate this experience.